Meet Rachel Behrens, a marketing and events expert with over 12 years of experience, currently leading the webinar strategy and execution along with in-person field marketing and executive event planning for Workiva. Rachel previously worked as an agency event planner, handling pre-event and on-site logistics for programs both nationally and internationally. When she's not busy planning events, Rachel spends time with her husband and two sons, Jackson and Bowen, in Iowa. Stay tuned to learn more about Rachel's insights and tips for successful marketing and event planning. 1, 2, 3, welcome to Eventus 365, the podcast that's all about corporate events and the magic behind the scenes. I'm your host, Yanique DaCosta, and I am excited to take you on a journey through the world of corporate events. But before we dive in, let's talk about the stress of creating marketing material for your events. We all know how tough it can be when deadlines are tight and resources are limited, but guess what? YKMD Visual Communications has got your back. Our design firm specializes in working with corporate event professionals just like you, and we're here to help take the stress out of creating stunning graphics for your event. Our team of expert designers can deliver custom brand compliant designs in just 12 hours. So whether you need branding, signage, marketing materials, or anything else, YKMD's got you covered. Okay, now that that's done, let's start the show. So it is official. We are here and we are recording and we are chatting with you, Rachel. I want you to just go ahead and just tell me a little bit about your journey in marketing and like events industry and what led you to your current role at Workiva.
Yeah, so I always kind of call myself the accidental event planner in that I never set out to be in events. I, graduated from school in marketing, but 15 years ago almost when I graduated, that was not something I could major in, right? And so it was never positioned to me as, oh, this could be a career path. So I instead graduated, kind of thought I'd be in a market research type role. The psychology of marketing always fascinated me, why people buy what they buy, why you choose one product or another. Is it brand loyalty? Is it something else? And so when I got hired, I was the second person in a marketing department at this biotech company, like a startup kind of feel. And so when you're the second person on a team, you really do it all, right? Like you have yourself and your manager, you wear a lot of hats. And so I started out, doing mailers, doing even cold calling. And eventually I got tasked with leading our sponsorships and our conferences and the booth we'd have, there at the event. And as that kind of evolved, I got into hosting our evening events at night, inviting our customers and our prospects to those. And after doing a few of those and kind of the adrenaline rush you get, from hosting events, right? I feel like all of us as event planners, you kind of have to love that rush of hosting a live event, whether it's virtual or in person.
To survive.
And, yeah, exactly. You're like for those, 2 or 4 hours or whatever it is, like you put so much planning and thought into it, knowing that you can't control everything that happens. And I was like, I like this, this is kind of where I see myself. And so, after that company, I went and worked for an agency doing events, and it's a lot of fun. I loved it. I learned a lot working with the clients, being on that side of it. And then after about 3 years of that, I was looking for opportunities where I could go move in-house to work at a bigger corporation and be on their in-house events team. And so that led me to Workiva, where I've been for, over 7 years. And I've gotten to work on both our large scale in-person, what we call our user conference. And then now my focus is on our smaller, more VIP field marketing events, as well as all of our virtual events. So yeah, it's been an interesting ride, but it's been a lot of fun and learned a lot along the way.
So what's like the most memorable or impactful event that you've worked on and what made it stand out?
Yeah, I think I have two examples. So one of them is I worked on a client event. It was their incentive trip. So their top sellers, producers got to go on this trip every year. And we took the group to Puerto Rico. And so it was my first time, going to Puerto Rico, being with this kind of VIP client group. And I got the task of the jungle expedition. So it's my job to not lose anyone as we were walking through this jungle in Puerto Rico. And it was so cool. But, when you're at that time I was, my early mid-20s and trying to tell, adults who are, quite more senior than you
Yeah.
to stay on the path, don't wander, can't lose anyone. You all got to get back on the bus.
I mean, you'll be lucky if they're sober.
Yeah, that too. Yes. Oh yeah. I've had many other types where, wine tours, same thing. You got to make sure everyone gets back on the bus and you don't lose anyone. And so I think having those and that experience, my early mid-20s, and I'm not one that I'm a little more introverted. Like I feel like event planners, you kind of fake it till you make it, being that you have to be energetic and outgoing and talk to people, and I'm good at that. But at the end of the day, I want my book and I want to be alone, but forcing myself out of my comfort zone like that, just having those experiences was impactful. And then coming to Workiva, getting to work on, large 2,000 plus person conferences. I think the first one that I ever got to work on is still the one that stands out to me, even though the event has evolved, since 2016 when it first started, but just learning what it takes to put on a show of that size and still while making sure each individual feels welcome and seen and like you have a path for them and a journey for them at that event, was really cool. And getting to, whether it's down to the food and beverage choices that we have or the accommodations we make for people who someone, had broken an ankle before they came, and just making sure each person feels valued. And I feel like that's the biggest thing I've learned from working on those large events is that, well, yes, you have 2,000 people, like each person is different and kind of catering to each person at your events.
Well, there are a couple of things that you said, and you see every time I like look down, look to the right, like I'm literally just making notes because something pops in my head and I just don't want to forget it.
Sure.
You were talking about kind of like accidentally falling into this like career path. And I don't know if I've had a conversation with anyone who didn't accidentally fall into events, myself included.
Yeah.
And found a weird love for it. Especially when you're moving from like the do it all situation when like you are working with a small team, because like for me that's kind of similar to how I started, right? Like I was in corporate and I was like the senior graphic designer, but then we had a lot of marketing tasks and there were a lot of trade shows going on and there were just so many things to be managed that had to get done, especially on a smaller budget, product shoots, catalog creations, again, managing. And somehow I managed to become the trade show manager as well. It was very
Yep. That's how it works, right?
that was my first experience, and my boss was like, she can do it.
Yeah, right.
And it came from me saying, I'm designing this stuff for this trade show. I want to go to the trade show and see how people are interacting with it. And I was like, you can do this at the trade show. Like, well, she can manage the trade show now.
Right.
Yep. And it's like, I don't know if I'm being punished or rewarded.
Right.
Because I'm also an introvert and people don't really recognize it, but like I can be outside, outgoing, bubbly, all that, interactive, have the conversations, ask the hard questions, but I will stay in my room with my door locked all day, just me and my book. I don't think you can even see it, but like one of those books over there. Can you see it over there?
Yes.
There you go.
Yep.
I will sit here all day with my books and just have no problem. And then even sometimes just like going down like a research rabbit hole on like different techniques and stuff, especially with, the technology evolution that's happening out there in the world, and kind of figuring out how to develop new skills to embrace it. But as you were talking about your events and like understanding like different attendees or different people and might respond to different things in different ways, for me that was kind of a really good entry point into diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how we can plan events and create environments that make people feel like they belong, even though they have different cultural backgrounds and come with different experiences. So in what ways have you incorporated DEI into your event planning processes? And can you share some examples of your best practices?
Yes, I think, thinking back to our large conference that we do, one of the things is that we always look at when we're planning out dates to host it. Is this going to interfere with any holidays that are important to people? Like, some people,
Ooh, that's a good one.
whether it's Ramadan or, any of, the broader, like, we tend to kind of only see things from our own lens, right? I'm like, oh, it's, September. It's not anything I have going on in September. September is great, but have you looked at what's going on in the world? And like, people in the United States are celebrating these world holidays with their respective religions. And making sure that, sometimes with large events, these dates are the dates that are open. Okay, we still want this audience to attend. What food accommodations do they need? Do they need special places to go during the day? And so just kind of keeping that in mind, I think is really important. And I also think of inclusions even like with people who are introverted or have sensory situations, like giving people spaces in large events to disconnect and get away from everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And so just really being mindful of that. And even like at evening events, a lot of times we'll host music and large spaces. It's loud, but maybe people don't want to be in the main party. So we always try to give other options for entertainment. Like, we want you to come and be a part of the event, but maybe you don't want to be in the dance floor with 500 of your other closest friends. You want to be off playing a game with your coworker. And so, kind of looking at it like holistically in that way too is what we always try to incorporate in events. And, even on webinars where we have, in virtual event spaces, you have people who want to ask a question live, or maybe they want to type in the question and want to be responded to separately via email. So, it is even, in a virtual world where it seems like that would be something that, you don't think about that like nature of accommodations, just always making sure people feel seen and heard, even if, they're not comfortable in one situation, making sure there's options.
I love that. And I love all the considerations that you were talking about, because so I live in Jamaica, like the country, not the city in Queens, and I always have to clarify.
Okay.
And this week is like Easter week. So here, Easter, like Good Friday, people don't do anything. Everything's like closed. Easter Sunday, like you can't buy dinner outside. It's like not really a thing. Palm Sunday is like everybody is at church in their Sunday best. And it's so funny because living in America for so long, I was so confused. I was like, what's happening?
Why is everything open on Good Friday or Palm Sunday?
I'm like, this is why can't no. I was like, why? Because I'm back in Jamaica right now. I'm like, why can't I just get what I want? I'm just trying to get a bottle of what I can't get. That's ridiculous. And I've talked about, because I've now gone to America, lived there for 16 years, and become indoctrinated in that culture and that way of living. And I've completely forgotten. And this is someone who was like born and raised in Jamaica and is just like,
isn't it? Yeah, it's wild.
It's so easy to forget.
Yes.
It's so easy to forget people outside of yourself when you're only taking your own perspective and your own feelings into consideration. But when it comes to events, we can't really afford to do that because it's really easy to like alienate people because of that.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Switch gears just a bit. You were talking about some of your like smaller, more intimate VIP events and like focusing on like the digital side. Can you talk to us about an approach in creating a balance when it comes to event strategy that incorporates both virtual and in-person events, and like what factors do you consider when determining the right mix, or is that not something that you have control of?
Yeah, I love that question, because I feel like that's something, especially now that, for lack of a better phrase, like this post-COVID world, that we're in. I took over virtual events at the end of 2019 for my company, not knowing that in 4 months, I got thrown in. We used to do, maybe, I don't know, a handful of webinars a quarter, pre-March of 2020. And then everything had to pivot, right? And so then all of a sudden we were doing double, triple virtual what we were doing previously. And so now that we're back in person, and I am getting to host these cool VIP experiences again, and that right mix. And it's been interesting because I actually recently we hosted kind of our first workshop or like more VIP style event in person. We brought it back, since 2019. And figuring out how to even get people to show up, right? Is interesting. And you put all this money and time into an event. You're like, do people even want to be back in person? But the thing is, like, it is hard. I feel like it is harder to get people out of their houses. But the people who do come, you could just, the energy that we had in that room.
They really want to engage.
They did. And they were so engaged and so happy just to be with people. And, while, still taking precautions, and it's not right. It sounds so silly, but like people don't have the opposite.
Sound silly because I believe you when you say that, because I am the person who you would really have to convince to leave the house.
Yes.
Like, I am the person. So if I get there, right, I really want to be there, whether it's to gain value or to add value. Like, I really want to be. So I get it, and that's why it was so funny to me, because I'm like, yeah, no, I completely understand where she's coming from.
Yeah.
Talk to me then, like, some of the strategies that you've used to ensure like attendees feel safe and comfortable while you're still trying to deliver this like top-notch VIP experience.
Yeah, it's I guess the main thing now, is just having the PPE, those types of things available. So when you're working with your venue, making sure they have hand sanitizer stations readily available. And if there isn't, you go to your nearest, store and you buy personal hand sanitizers, and just kind of ensuring up front that, while people are becoming more comfortable being in crowds and being with other people, and just
There's
having
still an issue.
Yeah, there still is. And, you want people to feel safe at your event, and make sure that if that's a concern of theirs, that they can easily, sanitize their hands, or the other people are doing that. And so just kind of, preparing up front for that.
So, and then you can tell me if this is just like horrible. So I've attended a couple events where they still have the signs, like where they're like, okay, you get like a sticker, and like, this color means that you're willing to shake hands, this color means you're willing to hug, this color just means head nod. Like, is that something that you would consider even implementing?
I think, we've talked about it for larger events. I think for something smaller, like for the event we just hosted, it was kind of on a case-by-case basis, and people they were comfortable being kind of sharing that amongst themselves. But I could, for, larger events, or where maybe, people aren't going to be familiar with each other, having that. I've seen it on wristbands too. You get a wristband. Kind of similar. Yeah. I think, I think that was in 2022. That was a big thing. I haven't seen it yet in 2023 at the events I've been at, but I don't think it's ever wrong. I mean, even moving forward, like, if you're not comfortable shaking hands no matter what, like, someone should be okay with that, right? And if you need to make it known, you might as well.
It's funny that you say that, because I'm also horrible. It's clear that I'm horrible, because I pre-pandemic, I don't think I really like touching. So I have asthma, and people are like, wait, what does that have to do with anything? I have asthma, and flu season, if I got the flu, I was down and out for at least a month. Like, easy. Like, breathing is like death. And so, during the year that shall not be named, I did not leave my house for a very long time. I was like, I'm not gonna go outside to accidentally die. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this. And then eventually I got to the point where I was like, I'm outside since everybody's dying anyway. I went from one extreme to the other. But even now, I'm very much like, no, head nod, I'm fine. Head nod. And
we don't need a hug. We don't need to shake hands. Like, I see
but
you.
It's weird. It's weird because I make exceptions for some people. Like my good girlfriend, I'm hugging her. Whereas I'll see my neighbor who lives beside me every day, and I won't hug them. It's weird. And I don't even know how I justify the behavior. But I'm kind of just like, I'm just gonna pick and choose, and I'm probably gonna offend someone today. But I'm also a very direct person. A lot of other people may not be as direct, but as I'm listening to you, when you're talking about that smaller group, it also sounds like you're talking about a bunch of like power players who know how to speak up for themselves and know how to really navigate a room, as opposed to a larger event where it's like the demographic is not the same in terms of someone being able to really own their position and just being like, boundaries, you know?
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Yes. Yep.
But I think that's also a consideration for people to like keep in mind, like who's in the room, to figure out like what's the best approach to apply, because sometimes people forget to think about who's actually in the room. So as I'm talking about who's in the room, sometimes when you're working on these events, you kind of like talk to your sales team in order to really develop the best strategy to impact the clients, because they're talking to the clients every day, all day, every day. Can you share some tips on like working with a sales team to develop a successful field marketing strategy and then like create events that drive the actual results?
Yeah, I think that's something I've been really focused on in the last like 6 to 9 months, is just a lot of times, I don't know why there's this like disconnect between sales and marketing, a lot of organizations, but really just opening the lines of communication and building those relationships and building that trust, I think is really important. And letting them know that you can be a trusted partner and you want them to close deals and you want the companies to succeed. And field marketing is a really interesting channel, right? Because it can be so impactful when you have the right people in the room. But getting to that point where you're inviting the right people and getting the word out and kind of seeing it through, it's, people are always like, oh, just plan a dinner. Well, there's a lot more that goes into planning a dinner. You know what I mean? And so
dinner isn't just dinner.
No, it's a registration page. It's building the right target list. If you're not hitting your registration goals, how are you pivoting? And so I think just starting,
also figuring out how to actually engage conversation at this dinner.
100%.
How to create something actionable when people are leaving. Like, how does it actually impact the company and the company's bottom line? So
exactly, the follow-up after the event.
Lots of complexities.
So I think starting early and often with the sales and have those conversations, what regions, what cities are you trying to target? And they know if they're a seller, in that region, they know if someone's going to show up to a pure happy hour versus you might need a suite at a big professional sporting event, and those investment levels are very different and what you're putting behind those events are different. And so just learning about their market and who their accounts are and what's going to drive them to show up has been, a lot of learning. So those are things that I don't know. They know their people that they're selling to. And also just giving yourself enough lead time to do the event well. I think a lot of times, like going back to dinner, or even like any like a sporting event, people are like, oh, I want to host this next month. Like, well, we need some time to promote this thing, to build out who we want to invite. People need time to book it on their calendar so they can actually show up. And so just kind of reframing like the expectations with people and to do an event well, what that looks like. And just having those conversations. And again, going back to reiterating with sales that you're their partner, like you want to see these events do well and succeed, and how you can help each other do that.
Okay. So talking about like succeeding, like how do you feel like technology has impacted corporate events industry, especially in like the last few years? And like what innovations are you particularly excited about? I know I have my own. And I try not to like impose my opinion too much, but
sure. On the virtual side, talk about virtual and in person. On the virtual side, it's just been really interesting. I know the buzzword everywhere right now, but in the platform we use, they just implemented this AI tool within the webinar program. And so, we're all familiar with ChatGPT now at this point. And so it's a similar AI tool where anyone who's doing a lot of virtual events and webinars, a lot of times you need a title and a description for your event written, that tomorrow you need a draft to show your writer or show your speakers. And if you don't have someone, or if you're just moving quickly, you have a small team, you can input a few details, about the event, the topic, maybe a few high points, keywords you're trying to hit, And then this tool will write your event description for you, or at least give you a draft to then start work from. Don't just walk blindly into your event with this AI generated description, right? But it gives you somewhere to start from. And so I think with, small teams who are needing to scale, and like for us, I do, almost all of our webinars. And so when I'm working on, say 10 to 12 at a time, if I need to get something moving and give something to a description for someone to react to, if I can have a tool that will help me at least start it and kind of collect my thoughts, I think that's going to be huge. Just for small teams who are trying to crank out so many of these virtual events, because they're not going away, right? Even though we're all getting back in person, everyone's still doing virtual. It's always going to be a big channel for companies with their demand gen. For in person. Oh, sorry. Yes. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna say that I'm a big, again, graphic designers might kick my butt, but I'm a big fan of AI. But not AI as a replacement for humans, right? Just like you said, like AI as a tool to help us to be more efficient, to help us to increase our level of creativity and productivity. And so it's funny that that's what you said, because I didn't feel like, for me, it wasn't a buzzword. It was more like that's exactly what I was thinking.
Cool.
Kind of situation. Anyway.
Yeah, I think, okay, so that's on the virtual side. And then for in-person, I think, again, kind of going back to scaling and trying to, do more and more when maybe your headcount isn't growing at your company, or just like me, I like to be in the weeds and like creating things. And so there's a lot of technology coming out now where, you can create your own event registration pages and they look beautiful and very, very quickly. And then they integrate with your Marketo and Salesforce. And so just kind of looking at, and even if we're not using that today, like trying to pitch that as an option, in the future, like, hey, we want to expand our field marketing events. Our web team can't keep building these custom pages. How can I step up? And I like to do that type of thing. I like finding, the right images and things that are going to help build out this beautiful page. When people land on it, they're like, oh, this event, like, this is well done. This is something I want to attend. And by the way, I built 4 of these today, and so just anything that can help you scale and work smarter, while still, letting you kind of control everything too, I think is cool. And there's a bunch of those out there, but there's some good ones that you can whip up a page in 30 minutes.
There's one that I have grown to really appreciate, which is like splashthat.com. A lot of my corporate clients tend to use it. And so I own a design firm, and so we put together like all these things. And we've had to like train a section of our team to utilize the platform. I'm actually even like doing some like outreach to them right now to kind of like figure out like how we could do some like partnership on like delivery and get like some special like company to company training to make sure that we're really serving our clients the right way. Because you're right, like having that burden like internally is really hard for event planners and for the marketers as well. And they want to support the event and they want it to succeed, but the agility that is needed for events is not always something that a larger corporate structure or brand can support. So I could definitely get behind that and understand why it would be necessary or why it would be used in that way. Let me see. How do you typically stay up to date on like the latest trends or like best practices or anything like that?
Yeah, I have big fan of blogs and newsletters. I also
which ones?
I get this newsletter. It's called it's more of like they do venue sourcing, but they also have a newsletter. It's called the Vendry. And so
I'm familiar with them.
I it's a great resource for planners who are maybe trying to find, unique venues on their own. But then they also come out with just, they have different articles, different kind of best practices. BizBash, that's a pretty well-known one. Love BizBash. I'm always like, all this inspiration. If only I had millions and millions and millions of dollars. Yeah.
And all the time, because
all the time.
Don't forget, it's all time consuming no matter what. Unfortunately, totally. AI can't do everything for us yet.
Exactly. Yeah. But I love their newsletter because, events that I would never get to go to, South by Southwest or some of those bigger ones where these activations are so amazing. And then, but maybe there's a little piece that I can, idea or inspiration I can take from it without having to recreate, the whole activation. This is not an event one, but this is just my like favorite inspo
Okay.
newsletter and podcast right now. But there is a lot of things that tie back to like event planning. I feel like, I actually saw her at an event planner conference. She was a keynote speaker. Judy Holler is her name. She actually has a background as a comedic improver.
Okay.
And so I think
That
her
sounds
message,
interesting.
right? But I like to relate it back, and I love her stuff because in the event world, we are improvers a lot of the time,
Oh,
right?
all day, every day. Yeah.
Yes. Like, I mean, like there's never a dull moment. I think that's why I'm still in this career after all this time, because I'm never bored. But I
Mhm.
love that. And so with Judy, what she talks about in her message is, that kind of yes and that they use in improv comedy. You're never saying no. And not that we should never say no, because I feel like in events, you need to tell people no sometimes, but just embracing like the questions and the challenges and the change. And she has a really cool message, and she does this Friday newsletter that's just always super inspiring. So like for anyone, not just event planners, but recommend her.
I actually really like when you were talking about the yes and portion, because I just imagine, even, let's say we don't say no. Let's say we say yes to everything. But then you go, yes, I can absolutely make that happen. And I'm going to need an extra $2 million in budget to make it happen.
Right.
Oh,
True.
well,
Yeah.
okay. All right. You want to change the entire food menu? I can absolutely make that happen. And in order to do that, I'm going to need additional funds to do X amount with this, to fly in this, to do this. And then anytime the and is more money, it makes everything a lot easier.
True. And because they tend to rethink the ask sometimes. So yeah, I love that. Yeah, it's reframing it, because you want to still be seen as, a cooperator, and that you're that person that they can go to with ideas, but you also need to be a realist. And so yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I have one last question before I let you go, if you don't mind.
Yes.
What is one event that you would recommend anyone attend at least once in their life, at least anyone within the corporate event space?
I'm trying to think of the best ones I've been. That is a great question. I've attended, it's called SEMA, Summit Corporate Event Management Association. They were recently bought out by PCMA, but it's a big event planner conference. Like that's where I saw Judy Holler speak. And I think for anyone who's in that corporate event marketing space, who just, we're all such a unique breed, I feel like, and unless you've been in events and have lived that life, sometimes it's hard to talk to people about it. And so it's just a really amazing experience to be with.
Because it just looks like so much fun.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. And I know I think my family at one point was like, you just travel for a living? I'm like, no. It's not, I'm not having fun, and I'm having a little bit of fun, but
like I'm not a flight attendant.
Like I'm there to work, and I'm there for 5 days, making sure the reels don't come off this 5-day long event. Yeah. But yeah, it's a really cool experience being, with hundreds of other people who do what you do day in and day out, and learning. So yeah, I got to go for the first time last year, and it was a very cool experience.
Well, you are not the first person to mention that.
Okay, good.
So that means that it has been verified, people. It might be time to go to SEMA if you haven't been. All right. Well, thank you so much, Rachel, for your time and for chatting with me. I know that the listeners are definitely going to get a lot of information from this, and are definitely going to be able to level up their corporate event careers.
Thank you so much for having me. This is a lot of fun.
My pleasure.
And that's a wrap for this episode of Aventis 365. We hope you enjoyed listening and learning something new today. If you enjoyed the show, please leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform to help event professionals discover us. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode, and sign up for our newsletter for behind-the-scenes content and updates on upcoming events. If you have any suggestions for future topics or guests, or just want to say hello, you can reach us at info@aventis365.com. We love hearing from our listeners. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on Aventis 365.